Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about this systemic mycosis. The systemic mycosis is nothing but it usually involves the internal organs, not only skin and hybrid tissue. It also involves internal organs. These are mainly caused by soil saprophytes. Infection is accidental. Okay, infection is accidental. And the severity varies from asymptomatic to fatal infection. These are usually dimorphic fungi. What is this dimorphic fungi? Dimorphic fungi is nothing but in the tissues. I mean, in the host and Saprus dextrose agar at temperature 37 degrees, they exist as yeast form. When at temperature 25 degrees centigrade, on the Saprus dextrose agar, they exist as mold forms. Okay, these are usually the systemic infection is systemic mycosis is mainly due to inhalation of the airborne spores. The systemic mycosis is mainly caused by most commonly caused by four important species that causes the histoplasmosis, plastomycosis, coccidioidomycosis, and paracoccidioidomycosis. These are the four important, most common systemic mycosis. The first one is histoplasmosis. This histoplasmosis is the one caused by thermally dimorphic fungi. These are intracellular infection of the reticuloendothelial cells. These are intracellular organisms virtually infects the reticuloendothelial cells. They are present worldwide, but most commonly seen in US. They exist as epidemics in some western and southeast states. These are most commonly seen in soil which is contaminated by bird or bat excreta. So the soil is the soil contains high amount of nitrogen. Most commonly, mostly they exist as asymptomatic. Severity can be seen within. Usually, their severity is very rare. Next, if you see the pathogenesis, I already told, human gets infection by inhalation of the spores. After inhalation of these spores, they are engulfed by the macrophages. Inside the macrophages, these spores are converted into yeast forms and undergoes multiplication. Later, they are disseminated into the different disseminated and spreads to different regions like lymph nodes, liver, spleen, adrenal gland, intestine, and bone marrow. They are disseminated to various organs and also tissues. Usually, these are halted by the cell-mediated immunity after 10 to 14 days. They are presented as vasculitis, tissue necrosis, caseating granulomata, and these are killed by some of them can be killed by macrophages, and finally we can see the calcification also. If you see the symptoms, the first most common infection, first most common manifestation is usually it involves the lungs. So primary infection is respiratory tract. The first and most important symptom is some prodromal symptoms like fever, headache, chills, myalgia, chest pain. These are the primary symptoms. And sometimes they may be associated with pericarditis, arthralgias, arthritis. And in severe cases, you may see the acute respiratory distress syndrome also, which is associated with the hepatomegaly and splenomegaly. And finally, very rarely it may disseminate. It may be frequency may be 1 in 2000 in adults. And if you see the manifestations, clinical manifestations of this histoplasmosis, they may be present manifested as chronic pulmonary histoplasmosis, mediastinal granulomatosis, histoplasmoma, or there may be involvement of the ocular. Ocular may be presented as ocular histoplasmosis syndrome. This chronic pulmonary histoplasmosis is usually seen the person who had previously previously some morbidity like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, emphysema. The person maybe is the person who are suffering with chronic pneumonia. The person may have, I mean, sometimes due to this infection may have some cavities in the lungs, and sometimes the person who have reactivation or reinfection. Okay, so usually it infects the apical area of the lungs, results in the cavitation. And second clinical manifestation may be presented as mediastinal granulomatosis and fibrosis. The next one is histoplasmoma. This it may be presented as nodule formation. Okay, fibrocaseous nodule formation, and on progression, we may see caseation and calcification. If it involves the eyes, you may see the choroiditis. The person may lose the vision due to the involvement of the macular area. This is a picture showing the granulomatous lesion of the mouth. This is nothing but oral histoplasmosis. And if you see the diagnosis of this histoplasmosis, diagnosis is mainly due to the microscopic examination, or due to the microscopic examination and culturing of these tissues. Sometimes serological diagnosis may also helpful for the this diagnosis of the histoplasmosis. The common specimens that we can collect are the sputum, blood, bone marrow, lesions from the wound, or biopsy specimens. On direct microscopic examination, we may see the yeast cells, budding yeast cells. Okay, budding yeast cells. It can be with the help of microscopy. We can make a KOH or calcofluor stain. Tissue specimens can be visualized by staining with the PAS. That is, PAS is nothing but periodic stain, staining, and GMS stain, gomeromethanamine silver stain, or GIMSA stain. And in routine histology, HND stains is also useful for the diagnostic purpose of this histoplasmosis. Under the microscope, we can observe the small yeast cells inside the macrophages, which measures about 2 to 4 micrometers in size. Okay, inside the inside the host, it can be seen as it can be exists as yeast form. So that's why we'll see the yeast cells only, 2 to 4 micrometers in size, which are seen intracellular of the macrophages. Okay, this is the picture showing the growth on the Sabro's dextrose agar. And next picture, right side picture showing the macrophage containing budding yeast cells. And this is the picture showing the KOH mount and calcofluor stain. You can see the budding yeast cells. The clear picture, which is fluorescent calcofluor stain. Okay, budding yeast like cell, budding yeast cell. And this is the HND stain, hematoxylin stain of the mouth biopsy, showing the budding yeast cell. This is the picture showing the mouth biopsy of HND. And this is the picture showing the GMS of lung biopsy, budding yeast cells. Okay. This is about the microscope picture of the tissues. I mean, tissues are biopsy specimens. On culturing and the Sapphoros dextrose agar, we can observe white to brown mold growth, which is cottony growth. Growth can be seen only after 2 to 8 weeks. 2 to 8 weeks. This is about the culture. If the specimen if the specimen is inoculated in Sapphoros dextrose agar and it is incubated at 25 to 30 degrees, then only we'll see that this mold forms only. And serological diagnosis is also helpful. Serological diagnosis is also helpful for the diagnosis of histoplasmosis. They are latex agglutination, precipitation, complement fixation test. Antigen can be detected by using the methods like radioimmunoassay, ELISA. It has high sensitivity, but there is decreased specificity when compared to the complement fixation test. Animal inoculation is also useful for the diagnosis of this histoplasmosis. This is the picture showing the cottony, white, brown cottony growth on Sapphoros dextrose agar. And another important diagnostic feature of this histoplasmosis is when it is grown at 25 to 30 degrees centigrade, we can observe the septate hyphae. Okay, septate hyphae showing trabeculate macroconidia with sessile or sometimes sessile or stalked microconidia is also seen under the microscope. This is the diagnostic feature, distinctive feature of the histoplasma capsulatum. These are nothing but the asexual spores. And this is the picture showing the trabeculate macroconidia and microconidia. This is the macroconidia and these are the microconidia. This is a very important characteristic feature of the histoplasma capsulatum. And if you see the treatment of this histoplasma capsulatum, for mild and mild cases doesn't require any treatment, but for moderate cases, itraconazole orally can be given. For severe cases, amphotericin B can be given IV. But for immunocompromised patient or at severe cases, amphotericin B can be given. Amphotericin B IV can be given, and itraconazole can be given for suppression. For less severe cases, itraconazole can be given for treatment of this histoplasma capsulatum. The next one is blastomycosis. This blastomycosis is caused by species that is Blastomyces dermatitis. Okay, this is also a thermally dimorphic. Okay, dimorphic, that means in tissues and at a temperature 37 degrees centigrade, it may exist as a yeast form. But when it grows at 25 to 30 degrees centigrade, it can be it exists as a mold form. These are mainly seen in North America. That's why it is also called North American blastomycosis. Rarely seen in South America and Africa of Mid East Asia. And I already told these are this systemic mycosis is around soil saprophytes. So on exposure to soil, risk of infection is high. I mean, contaminated risk. Exposure to contaminated soil risk is very high. These are usually seen with warm and moist soil, which are rich with organic debris. Okay. And if you see the pathogenesis of this Blastomyces dermatitis, all these systemic mycosis, primary infection is mainly the lung, mainly the lung. So whenever the host, whenever the human inhales these spores, he may get the lung infection, primary pulmonary infection, and very rarely it disseminates, resulting with broad clinical manifestations. Usually disseminates to bone, skin, lung, genitourinary system, results in the chronic granulomatous and suppurative infection. These two are the characteristic manifestations of this blastomyces dermatitis, that is chronic granulomatous lesions and suppurative infection. So this human gets the infection, human gets the, whenever the human inhales the conidia spores inside the lung, they transform to yeast form. Yeast form. So already told, in the humans, in the tissues, they exercise yeast form. It converts into the yeast form, results in the inflammatory reaction. So there is a accumulation of this neutrophils, and there is also non-gastritic granulomas. And there is also suppurative causes suppurative infection. So there is also a pyogranulomatous response with high amount of epithelioid and giant cells. Usually they are asymptomatic. Sometimes it also results in the symptomatic infection. In acute, prodromal symptoms can be seen, like flu-like symptoms, fever, muscle pain, joint pain, chest pain, and cough. And pneumonia, in pneumonia, sometimes it may progress to pneumonia also. Spontaneous, whenever the patient progresses to pneumonia, resolution is very rare. So it may proceed to chronic or recurrent infection can be seen in that patient. On chest X-ray, we observe the lower lobe consolidation. In chronic or recurrent infection, usually it shows prediction to the pulmonary and skin. If it involves the lung, we may see the chronic pneumonia, cavitation, and there is pleural effusion also. If it involves the skin, you may see the pustular heaped up ulcerated lesions. Okay, and also sometimes it also involves the subcutaneous tissue, results in the nodules. Rarely it involves the bone, joint, and genitourinary tract. If it involves the genitourinary tract, it mainly shows predilection to the rostrata epididymis. This is a picture showing the granulomatous lesions on the face. This is nothing but a blastomycosis. And if you see the diagnosis of this blastomycosis, the specimens that are commonly used are sputum, first taken from the lesion, granulomatous lesion, or prostatic fluid, urine, or any biopsy tissue. For microscopic examination, we have to prepare the KOH mount and calcofluor, where we can see the yeast forms. For tissues, biopsies, we'll use the stains like paradic stain, bromine silver, and H&E stains. We'll observe the multinucleated yeast cells with the broad-based buds. Okay, budding yeast cells. These are also budding yeast cells, but bud base has a broad base. This is the characteristic feature of the blastomyces dermatitis. Okay, which measures about 7 to 20 micrometers in length. Okay, this is the most important characteristic feature. Broad-based buds arised from the mother cell. This is the picture showing the KOH mount mother cell with the broad-based. So both it is showing both are similar. Okay, daughter cell we'll unable to differentiate the mother cell and daughter cell because of this broad-based bud. Okay, this is also mother cell and broad-based bud arising from the mother cell, calcofluor stain. And this is the picture showing the mother cell with broad-based arising daughter cell. And PAS, brain biopsy, PAS, and skin biopsy. This is the picture showing yeast cell with mother cell, broad-based daughter cell. And this is the another picture showing daughter cell with the broad-based daughter cell, mother arising from the mother cell. And that is about the microscopic examination. If you see the culture after inoculation of this specimen, it takes 14 days to 8 weeks for the to grow. Okay, mycelial forms are usually seen at 25 to 30 degrees centigrade. They are white to light brown cottony growth bearing conidia. And in older cultures, we can observe the chlamydospores measures about 7 to 8 micrometers. Conidia measures about 3 to 5 micrometers. Conversion to yeast form at 37 degrees is necessary for further investigation. For investigations like using immunodiffusion or exoantigen or molecular probe. And this is the picture showing the mole phase at 25 to 30 degrees centigrade, showing the septate hyphae with the conidia. And you see the serological diagnosis. We have complement fixation test with the sensitivity less than 50%. And in case of immunodiffusion, sensitivity is only 80%, but it has a high specificity. Its specificity is more than 80%. For disseminated disease, specificity is almost 88%. For local disease, specificity is almost 33%. ELISA is also available for diagnosis of this blastomyces dermatitis, but it has, when compared to the sensitivity, specificity is high. That is about 92%. If the titer shows, if the antibody titer shows more than or equal to 1:32, indicates the strongly suggestive of acute infection. If it titer shows 1:8 to 1:62, it may suggest the person may be suffering with blastomycosis. And if you see the treatment of this blastomycosis, it can be treated by itraconazole or amphotericin B. Amphotericin B for life-threatening diseases, or for CNS if it involves the central nervous system, or who have lack of response to itraconazole, or the person suffering with itraconazole toxicity. Amphotericin B can be used in these cases. Next one is coccidioidomycosis. This coccidioidomycosis is also caused by dermally dimorphic fungi. It is a very dangerous fungi. So the culturing or any work with this coccidioides can be done in the laboratory by using biological safety cabinets. Work should be done by using the biological safety cabinets. When if you are doing work with this coccidioides, we should do the work only by using the biological safety cabinets. And usually seen in North America. Rarely it is seen in India. In recent years, it is rarely seen in India, particularly in Delhi during the period of 1905. Its incidence is very less, that is 0.43%. Human gets the infection by inhalation of the Arthrochonidia. These are nothing but the spores of the Coccidioides immitis, and which are present in the soil as mycelial phase. It can be presented as a primary infection because infection is mainly due to inhalation, so it mainly infects the lungs. Okay, mainly infects the lungs. Usually they are asymptomatic, but 40% maybe 40% patients persons may show the symptomatic after an incubation period of 1 to 3 weeks. This is also called acute valley fever or desert rheumatism. It has given a name because because in valley area and North American country, there had been an epidemic. That's why it is also called acute valley fever or desert rheumatism. It presented as arthralgia, fever, and also skin rash. Skin rash can be presented as anthroderma or maculopapular rash. This is a picture showing the primary coccidioidomycosis, allergic reaction because of the antigen of the coccidioidomycosis. Another presentation, not only it involves the lungs, the skin, it also involves the chest area. Can be presented as pleuritic pain, cough, sputum, and there is also eosinophilia because of the antigens that are produced by this coccidioidomycosis. Chronic pulmonary infection, usually they can be presented as asymptomatic, but only it may progress to 5%. It can be presented as chronic pulmonary infection. In asymptomatic cases, it can be presented as nodular cavity. In symptomatic cases, they can be presented as chronic pneumonia. On progression, you may see the cavities, bronchiectasis, and scarring, along with hemoptysis. Hemoptysis or empyema due to the brachiopulmonary fistula. And there is also a disseminated infection on on long-term infection. You may see the disseminated infection with the prevalence of 0.5%. That is skin. It involves the skin like verrucous granulomas, erythematous plaques, nodules. It also involves the musculoskeleton, particularly bones and joints. In bones, it involves the skulls, metatarsal, spine, and tibia. In joint areas, like knee, wrist, ankles are also involved in disseminated infection. This is a picture showing the chronic granulomatous coccidioidomycosis. And if you see the laboratory diagnosis of this coccidioidomycosis, under the microscope, we'll use the specimens like sputum, pus, any tissue biopsies. By using the stains, PAS and GMS stains and HND stains, we can observe the picture of this coccidioidomycosis. Mold forms can be seen at 25 to 30 degrees centigrade. They are white cottony growth with a septate hyphae. Okay, with a septate hyphae. Showing arthrochonidia or spores alternating with empty space. Okay, these coccidioidomycosis is very dangerous fungi. Conversion test can be done from mold to spirule at 37 degrees centigrade by using the special media. It can also used for exoantigen test or for molecular probe. To see the serology, IgM, IgG levels also can be detected by using the ELISA. IgM is mainly used for acute detection of the acute states. IgG is used mainly for a prognosis of the infection when the patient is on the treatment. This is the microscope picture showing the KOH showing the spirules. This is nothing but a spirule. Okay. So under the microscope, for coccidioidomycosis, we can observe the spirules with accumulated with endospores. Okay, this is important characteristic feature of the coccidioidomycosis. Pet mount. This is the picture showing the spirule is disrupted and releasing the endospores. Endospores into the outside, endospores into the exterior. And this is the picture showing the cottony growth. And this is a picture showing here one mistake, coca is not there. This is mold, only mold on LPCB mount. Just don't remember this coca. Okay, this is a picture showing the LPCB mount with Arthroconidea. This is nothing but a Arthroconidea alternating with a space. These are the Arthroconidea. Whenever the person uses this Arthroconidea, he may get the coccidioideum mycosis. And this is another picture showing Arthroconidea. Okay, this is Arthroconidea, and there is a empty space. Here, these are the Arthroconidea. This is the space. Next, other diagnostic tests should be done. There are chest X-ray, and the skin test is used for antigen. Skin test is also used to detect the delayed hypersensitivity by injecting the antigen like coccidioidein or spirulin antigen. We can observe the allergic reaction. For primary infection, paused by 4 weeks, and for disseminated infection, it may be seen as negative. The treatment is mainly used for patients who need treatment that is less than 5%, and CSF titer is more than 116 or 32, and persons who are worsening with clinical status at 6 weeks, particularly in immunocompromised patients or disseminated infection. Disseminated patients. Treatment that are commonly used are amphotericin B, azoles like fluconazole, itraconazole. These are the drugs that are commonly used. For non-meningeal involvement, fluconazole, itraconazole is sufficient. For meningitis, fluconazole, amphotericin B is used. Next one is paracoccidioideum. So this is the last systemic mycotic fungi. This is also a soil saprophyte and causes the humans accidental infection. It's mainly caused by Paracoccidioideum brasiliensis. This is the species that is causing Paracoccidioideum mycosis. Okay, this is also called South American blastomycosis. In the next, in previous slide, I told about North American blastomycosis. This one, paracoccidioideum, is blastomycosis dermatitis is a North American. This paracoccidioideum is a South American paracoccidioideum. So it causes the South American blastomycosis. As usual, infection is mainly due to the inhalation of the spores. So lungs are mainly affected, results in the chronic pneumonia, chest pain, emphysema, and finally sometimes it may also leads to chronic granulomatous infection if it disseminates. Usually seen in the humid mountain forest. The laboratory diagnosis is, if you see the laboratory diagnosis of this paracoccidioideum brasiliensis, samples that we can collect are pus, crus, sputum, and tissue biopsies. On KH mount, we will observe the yeast cells with multiple buds. This yeast cell is encircled with arising budding cells. So it appears like mariner's wheel or pilot wheel. Okay, pilot wheel appearance. So this is the characteristic feature of the paracoccidioideum mycosis. For tissue sections, we will use the hematoxylin eosin stain, PAS, and GMS stain. As it is a dermatoctic fungi, yeast form is usually seen at 37 degrees centigrade and also in the host. Mold phase is usually seen at 25 to 30 degrees, 25 to 30 degrees centigrade on SDA, and also on the soil also. Okay, these are septate hyphae bearing intracalary or terminal chlamydospores. So this is a picture showing the mother cell. Okay, this is the mother yeast cell. This is mother yeast cell is encircled with the budding yeast cell. Okay, appears like pilot wheel. Okay, Marinus wheel it is also called pilot wheel or Marinus wheel. This is a characteristic feature of the Blastomyces Paracoccidoido brasiliensis. Okay, so this completes the systemic mycosis. Thank you.